Not too many years ago, we drew most of our resources from the earth and from the natural materials within it and that grew upon it. Today, many of those materials have been replaced by man-made synthetics. But there are still natural substances indispensable to our civilization. Among them, natural rubber. Still the reference standard for the rubber industry. Still indispensable, whether in its pure form or mixed with synthetics. Still irreplaceable in applications that call for unusual flexibility and strength. It comes from a tree that weeps. This is the tree that weeps. Its tears, liquid rubber. Its botanical name is Hevea brasiliensis, and it is virtually the world's only source of natural rubber. Almost all natural rubber grows in a tropical belt which stretches some 700 miles on either side of the equator. And within this belt, in many divergent countries, live men and women of different races, different cultures, but nonetheless linked by a common bond, the cultivation and production of natural rubber. In some of these countries, natural rubber production is vital to the economy. This is true in Malaysia, for instance, where the industry employs about half the total labor force and uses nearly 3/4 of the cultivated land. Almost 90% of the world's rubber is produced in a single region, Southeast Asia, with more than 1/3 coming from Malaysia. But in spite of these impressive statistics, a score of other countries also produce significant amounts of rubber. In Brazil, the original home from which Hevea spread around the globe, the scattered wild trees are being replaced with thick plantations, which feed their liquid rubber into the collection stations. In Liberia, on the West African coast, Firestone established a plantation back in 1926. Other holdings followed in the Philippines, Brazil, Ghana, Guatemala. But Firestone's Harbel plantation in Liberia remains the largest single rubber plantation in the world. These lush green African hills, where coffee and ivory and leopard skins once dominated the economy, are now an expanding source of natural rubber. Natural rubber has been known for centuries. The raw material is rubber latex, a milky white liquid that oozes out of the tree trunk. It comes into being in an extensive network of tiny tubes in the bark of the tree. Hevea will grow wherever conditions are similar to its native home in the Amazon basin. It is not too particular about soil conditions, but it does require tropical heat, high humidity, and rain. But physical conditions are merely the start. The rubber must be tapped, collected, processed, and shipped. And this calls for a high level of skill and expertise. This skill is seldom more evident than in tapping, the actual extraction of the latex harvest. Tapping usually begins at daybreak, since latex flows best in the cool of the morning. After 4 or 5 hours, the day's heat will make it coagulate and the flow will cease. So at sunrise, often earlier, the tappers set out on their rounds. Each tapper carries a gunga bag into which goes any scrap latex. This is usually either cup lump, the name the tappers give to rubber coagulated in the bottom of the cup since the day before, or tree lace, long latex strips that have formed on the previous day's cut. The chief tool of this highly specialized profession is a scalpel-bladed knife. The tapper must have exceptional manual skill and a special feeling for the trees, and most importantly, the delicate cutting touch of a surgeon. If the scalpel blade cuts as much as a millimeter too deep, the tree may be seriously damaged. Since latex tends to solidify rapidly, a dash of ammonia helps to slow coagulation. A healthy tree will replenish its bark at about the same rate as it is cut away, around 1 inch a month. Expert tapping will extend the potential yielding life of the tree over several decades. While much of the rubber comes from the company's own trees, independent farmers, like this tribal chief, supply a significant percentage of latex from their own plantations. A mature tree will produce up to 8 gallons of latex a year. This may not seem like much until you consider that each tapper will tap perhaps 500 trees a day. The material is collected at the end of the day's work, often before noon. Now, all around the world, drop by drop becomes cup by cup. Cup by cup becomes pail by pail. And eventually, pail by pail becomes tank by tank. In the forests, where roads are rare, delivery methods vary, from bicycles to a light shoulder yoke called a pickle stick, to a unique system of high-speed transportation developed on the Liberian plantation, an aerial tram. Latex is about 30% pure rubber, mixed with water, resins, proteins, sugar, and minerals. An acre of trees in 1 year can yield 2,000 pounds of rubber. And of course, there are many thousands of acres in the plantation, all feeding their latex into a network of collection stations. The rubber can now be handled in bulk as liquid latex. From the field collection stations, it moves in tank trucks to a central processing plant or factory. Here, the latex is strained to remove coarse impurities to balance out any possible differences in the latex from different parts of the plantations. A certain portion of the latex is purchased from nearby independent rubber farmers. This independent rubber may well have come from trees distributed to local planters interested in developing or improving their own rubber farms. Sometimes an independent will bring his rubber to the factory in coagulated form. These small businessmen contribute much to their country's economy. The first step in processing raw latex is to concentrate the material. Batteries of centrifugal separators spin out most of the water. In Liberia, most of the latex is shipped as a concentrated liquid, though in other parts of the rubber world, the principal product is dry rubber. Some of the liquid is coagulated to a thickened, curd-like mass for further processing, and ultimate shipment as crepe rubber. This is high-grade coagulum, a spongy solid. It now travels through a series of breakdown mills, each pass shredding it and softening it and making it more pliable. After rolling and sheeting, the coagulum ends up as a continuous strip of crepe rubber. This is cut into uniform lengths for convenient handling. The crepe rubber sheets are hung from racks in the hot room to dry, dangling and dancing in the currents of warm air in a surrealistic ballet. Since water is usually plentiful in the humid climates where Hevea thrives, open troughs often take the place of conveyor belts for moving the coagulum through the plant. The bulk of the purchased rubber and cup lump is washed, shredded, and blended, and then dried in an extrusion dryer, producing what is known as crumb rubber. After cooling, the crumbs are compressed into solid 75-pound bales. Not too many years ago, most of the world's rubber went to a few industrialized nations. Today, as more and more countries take their place beside the established giants, the demand for rubber has grown insatiably. Buying offices like this one in Singapore work around the clock. And scientists from Liberia to London are making significant advances in forest management and plant genetics, producing healthier, higher-yielding trees, reducing the period of immaturity, and increasing productivity, as in this instance by applying a yield stimulant to older trees. Breeding research leads to new and improved types of trees, and advanced techniques of cross-pollination result in improved yield, vigor, and resistance to disease. Seed pods with desirable characteristics are sought out and collected from prime trees. Each of these strange-looking big seeds has a pedigree like that of a highly bred racehorse. It may take nearly 20 years to develop a new and proven seed stock. Only seeds of known parentage are planted in the nursery. In due course, the seeds grow into sturdy young plants. When a seedling is about 1 year old, it is ready for the bud grafting process that will introduce strong new elements. First, a small flap is cut in the bark of the seedling near the ground. A high-yielding mother tree provides the budwood stock. The bud is cut and trimmed with care. The bud then slips neatly under the flap. Finally, it is bandaged in place until the graft takes. When the original trunk is cut off above the graft, the bud sends out its new shoot. The grown bud now becomes the main trunk of a new tree called a clone, healthier and higher yielding than trees developed as little as 3 years ago. As they grow, the clones will develop strong root systems and leaves that will fight off disease, plus trunks that will yield more latex. When they're about 7 years old, they will be ready for tapping. The productive life of a tree is usually about 25 to 30 years of tapping. Then it must be removed and replaced. One way of doing this is to clear some of the trees and dig rows of trenches for a new planting of young trees from the nursery among the old. Several years later, the old trees will be felled and removed. Thus, the cycle continues, with the rubber industry not only replacing old trees with new, but actually improving the species through research. The product of the tree Hevea goes to market in two principal forms, as baled rubber and liquid latex. Most of the baled rubber goes into the making of tires for the automotive and transportation industries. The rest of the crop is sold as liquid concentrate, field latex, from which most of the water has been removed. Latex concentrate is used in a wide variety of specialized products, which depend upon the unique strength and flexibility of natural rubber. Not too many years ago, nations fiercely prided themselves on their independence. But as distances figuratively shrink, as communications span the globe, they've come to rely more and more on each other's resources and technology. The relationship between Firestone plantations around the world and the host countries is a unique example of this interdependence. As a result of this pattern of mutual assistance, cooperation, and respect, new skills are called for. Levels of education are raised. Technical standards are improved. And with them, the living conditions and general welfare of the individual. Far more than rubber comes from the tree that weeps. From income derived from the industry come the funds for schools and teachers, for hospitals, for doctors and nurses and equipment, for nurseries, for clinics and their staffs. In some of the upcountry African villages, the traditional ways of life can still be found, and many of them have been carried on into the plantation communities. For centuries, these tribes have inhabited the country, perhaps from the time of Sheba. These are the Kru, the Kabundi, the Vai, the Kapele, the Bassa, the Bonsa, and a dozen more. People who have known only urban civilization sometimes think their ways primitive. But here in their own land, in ways incomprehensible to us, they have evolved their own proud culture. And, at once contrasting and coexisting, the modern plantation communities, sometimes deep in the forest, offer their employees a high standard of living, with conditions and pay scales among the best in the country. A 100 years ago, the world's annual supply of rubber, all of it natural, was 7,000 tons. Today, natural rubber production alone comes to about 3 million tons. It has yet to be replaced by any synthetic as an essential raw material for hundreds of products most people have long taken for granted. And in Malaysia and Ceylon, in Africa and Brazil, and in many other places where it is grown, natural rubber is essential too. Essential as an industry vital to the business of living. An industry whose lifeblood flows from a tree. An industry which makes it possible for its people to build a strong economy for themselves and a promising future for their countries. And as they benefit from the development of the resources of their land, so does the world at large.